This video is for those who would like to learn from the past. It is about the template steering of groups. It is quite long, but it is a unique snapshot of history and will be very useful in the future.
I'll be your facilitator. My co-facilitator is Julie, and if we get to a point where we're going to have people who want to make a point, you have to get on the stack through Julie. Please don't come and ask me. The present economic system
Conversation a bit further.
Oh no, I think we should have it here.
land, sea and air. Pollutes land, sea and air. It's causing massive loss.
Why is this loudmouth here representing people?
Under what authority is she here? Who's all of our authority? No, it is not, because the original protesters did not have this person under.
We call for a positive,
Yeah, but this. Yeah, okay.
sustainable economic system.
Yeah, why is it all about climate change all of a sudden?
That shows
There's a hierarchy that doesn't want the people to speak.
And tonight's guest, the guest we're going to be talking to, is my friend Deb, who I've known for about, well, we said just before this, about 15 years. And I'm just going to bring her in straight away because I think we're going to have a very interesting chat tonight. So, yeah, let's go back to that time. And when you first started getting into this, what got you into it in the first place?
I think, well, it initially started with health because I had a lot of dealings, bad dealings with hospitals. And I thought, I'm never going back to hospital. And I started looking into health and how the medical profession was corrupt from the core. Then I looked into Freemasons and things like that. And I think what really sort of caught my attention was, out of nowhere, I was looking in a charity shop and I saw this book, and it was Cambodia and Kissinger, his involvement in that.
Yes.
And I thought, how corrupt is this? And then that was before 9/11 happened. So
Right.
by the time because how I saw 9/11, it was weird because I had a friend that had a small boy like the same age as mine, and we went around a house and she had like a massive television on the wall, and she turned it on, and there was this what looked like a plane going into this building, and I said to her, "Is that like one of those Die Hard films?" And she went, "No, that's the news." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And then as it I just thought, this just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. It looked like a movie. It didn't look real. Apart from one guy at work, apart from Chris, but there was a young guy at work, Canadian. And I said to him, I said, "I've read about this 9/11 and that it was possibly an inside job." And he went, "I wouldn't be surprised."
Yeah, so going on from that, sort of movement started up. In London, there was the 9/11 Keep Talking group, there was 9/11 Truth, there was quite a lot of these truth groups, and they started getting infiltrated. And that's really where it got interesting, because then you realize that there's multi-layers of things going on. So, in other words, these groups that were there to talk about 9/11, just talking about it, were heavily infiltrated. And the gatekeeping started very, very quickly. And the intelligence services were very strongly involved. And I can say that with some confidence because we've both got experience of that. And we're going to get into that during the show. But yeah, the We Are Change thing started up, which became a kind of franchise. And in a way, that was like a model for the way things were going to go with the so-called protest movement.
Well, yeah. As I say, when I got together with my friend Chris, he introduced me to this group called London Truth Action. And they were a franchise of We Are Change, because some of the We Are Change people actually come to some of our meetings and got involved with us. And it was like, street action, basically giving out leaflets about 9/11 truth and videos and things, like DVD sort of thing. As I say, it worked for a while for me and Chris. And we did meet a lot of people, and you could see people's faces when you gave them the leaflets and you started talking to them. A lot of people actually took notice of what we were saying, and you had a feel-good factor, if you know what I mean, because I'd only just recently got into activism, so it was good for me to get out there, and I felt that I was among people that had the same views as myself.
I think that's a great important point, Debbie, that these initial group activities were quite empowering, but then of course everyone gets collectivized and the gatekeepers come in and steer the group, so the agenda changes, and then there's certain things you can't discuss.
That's right. Well, as I say, after a while, one occasion, the leader of this group was Gareth Noonan, and we'll hear a bit more about him later. But he asked me to be a manager of it, and I said, I'm not too sure about that. And then a further invite to some activity in the evening, some pub or something like that. I heard them all talking, and they was talking about a plane going into the Pentagon. And I thought, a plane went into the Pentagon? And I said, am I hearing right? Is that what you said? You think a plane went into the Pentagon? And they went, yeah. And I went, oh, for God's sake. Well, that was the last time I had anything to do with them, to be honest.
Did you have anything to do with a character called Ian Henshaw? Did you ever meet him?
No, I didn't know.
He was involved in the gatekeeping of the 9/11 so-called truth movement. I think that was more with the 9/11 Keep Talking, because I think some of these people took over the internet activities of these groups and became gatekeepers for the groups. And then, of course, people were getting banned and kicked out just for saying things that everybody else previously had been talking about. So that's right. An important point as well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, as I say, we did meet up with them again, because there was like a remembrance of 9/11, and it was outside the BBC. And we're all standing out there with placards and everything. And I noticed Gareth Noonan and all that was there. I said hello to him, but that was about it. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy sort of like marched up to me and said, Deborah Williams. And I looked at him and I thought, who's this? I don't even know. I said, I don't even know who you are. I said, how do you know my name? He said, oh, right, yeah, well, your name got round, with a... And I thought, because I didn't even know if who he was connected to. And it turns out he was part of this London Truth Action, We Are Change. And then, as I say, I don't know if we can talk. Can we talk about Daniel Overcheeky now?
And we met him at this event that was put on, and it was actually banned from Conway Hall. And then it was at some pub, and I think there had to be some bouncers there because there was people trying to push their way in. And it was quite a strange event because Daniel got up and he was putting out some great information about We Are Change. And it was a conclusion that I'd reached because I don't know whether you remember, but there was a website, We Are Change, and it looked like a real government website. And it had all these Alex Jones videos, then the usual disinformation in between. And that was that was a long time ago, wasn't it? That's probably about 12, 13 years ago. And he had some really good points, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Going back to that situation when I was outside the BBC and the We Are Change lot were there, and this guy come up to me. For the life of me, I can't think of his name now. I was looking at some of Daniel Overcheeky's research on this We Are Change lot, the London Truth Action, and he showed pictures of the characters that I know, he actually mentioned that he was walking along the street one day and he was being stalked, and this guy come out of the bushes out of nowhere and said, "Daniel Abajiki," you know, and it was the same guy that come up to me and said my name. Exactly the same guy.
Yeah, they do have a list of everyone who's in these groups, obviously.
Yeah.
That's what is very obvious, because if, say, you wanted anyone's information, all you have to do is form a group and they give you all their email addresses, then you get their addresses and they're on a mailing list. I think something like that happened with another copper, ex-copper. They're always ex-coppers, aren't they? Yeah. And he set up something called a community press group. And that was just gatekeeping all the information. So in other words, you're going to be a citizen journalist, but we know what you're all talking about. And we can gatekeep all the information, find out who's doing what. He actually wrote an article because I had uncovered a lot of this kind of behavior. And he said, mark my words, it doesn't take MI5 to see through Windows. And he sent it to me. This is when I was at the People's Voice. And he put some defamation in there, which would come up in a Google search. So I said, you've got to take that out. And he did. But he's still around. And when he turned up on the scene, he was talking about the Association of Chief Police Officers who had financial interests in, of course, the speeding awareness days. Anyone would know that. And they drop these big bombshells, which anyone can find out. And then when you start asking them questions, they go a bit red-faced and get a bit flustered because they have a program and they're only interested and they're only told to follow that. So if you throw them off, they don't know what to do. And these people are still around.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. But as I say, you know, obviously it was an awkward time, but I actually learned from it. So that is the beauty of it. I actually learned a lot from being in that group and spotted what they were up to, and that's given me information from, you know, to look for things and spot people in the future, if you know what I mean.
And I've just remembered what they all say if you point something out. They say, why are you so negative? Why are you trying to divide the group? And they accuse you of what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's the oldest trick in the book. I've had it thrown at me so many times. And I think that this is good information for people who are just catching up, because they'll be told all this stuff. Why is he slagging everybody off when you're not slagging everybody off? You're pointing something out that's wrong. And then, of course, that's dividing everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same old tricks, very tedious.
Yeah. As I say, the character Gareth Newman, Newnham, that was leading this London Truth action. I mean, he went on to Kew Bridge Eco Village, and we know that's all about climate change.
Yes.
And then further from that, he ended up an eco village at Occupy as well.
Yes.
So it's all connected.
They all go on from one thing to another.
Yeah.
And those eco villages were real hubs, weren't they? And I think they used them for monitoring. They also used them for kind of working out group behavior and strategy of what they're going to do next. But as we said, it's called British intelligence, but they're severely lacking in it, aren't they? Still to this day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. As I say, you know, you find that a lot of these people, you know, pop up everywhere, don't they? Different things. It
was around 2010 I started noticing more of the infiltration, but I'd been involved with it for about 5 or 6 years by then. But then I realized that most of it was infiltration. And we used to go to a group that met at the pub at Liverpool Street Station, the Wetherspoons, once a month, and it was called The Reality Group. And that group got heavily infiltrated, didn't it? And it was kind of funny because it was just a group of people who met once a month on a Sunday, and had lunch and chatted about things. And then you realize that how controlled everything was. So, we met there, and then we realized that a lot of the people who were coming in were what people call shills. They were agents. And then it got to the point, didn't it? Well, who isn't one?
That's right.
And it was like me, you, and Lisa, and a few others, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking, you know, of all the people that turned up there, people like Dom, Charlie Beach, Danny Shine, Ben Fellows. You know, that's just a few. Yes.
Yeah, the whole of the ones that kind of got used and put out there attended. And, well, we were pretty suspicious of all of them because a lot of them had connections with the police. They had open connections with the police, and they were openly talking to the police all the time.
Yeah. As I say, with Charlie Beach and Danny Shine, it was their T-shirts. Love the police. It's basically.
Love police, they called it actually. But yeah, that's what they were doing. It was a kind of controlling, a street theatre way of controlling what was going on, really. And then we found the contacts between these people and Occupy, which then it became really interesting for me because I could openly see the techniques being used of what became the new protest movement, which is basically the Soros type NGO protest groups like Extinction Rebellion. They all started about that time because it all came out of Occupy. And Occupy was taken up with Soros money, turned into climate change. And the money went into a thing called Climate Camp Action. The undercover police were involved in it. Tell us a bit about that, because this is something that I think people find very interesting. I've talked about it quite a lot because it's important, but let's get your view on it.
What, the Occupy? Well, as I say, me and my partner Eddie, we went to Occupy to see what was going on, and there was a heavy police presence there, and it didn't seem too bad at first, but then we went off for a drink, like coffee or something, and when we come back, Ed got through, and I was on the outside, and the police wouldn't let me through. And so we had to sort of like, you know, muscle our way in to get back in. And then like there was like quite a few of us on the steps linking arms, and the police came behind us. So yeah, it was quite scary, to be honest with you.
Yes, I mean, they started having these things called general assemblies. And from that, we get people's assemblies, citizens' assemblies. So it's just one template, which I keep talking about. Yeah, cool. Because the template started Occupy, because Extinction Rebellion was formed for the purpose of bringing in citizens' assemblies, communitarian communist citizens' assemblies, where people are steered into the intended outcome. And that was exactly how Occupy was steered. Exactly the same way. No difference to your local council.
No, it's right. But all their shaky hands and...
That's right. They had all these movements. So if you wanted to say something, you had to do this, like wave your hands about. So you can't see them because they're screen. But wave your hands about. And then you'd have a thing to speed them up. And they were like childish movements. Yeah. And they got everyone doing it. So it immediately put everyone into this kindergarten arrested development mode where you had a teacher at the front and a facilitator and co-facilitator. And they would control the whole thing. And we found out that the facilitators were change agents. We had Saskia Kent, who worked for East Anglia University, was in charge of climate change stuff. And she came in dressed as a clown. The next thing is, she is the facilitator and saying the equivalent of things like whose streets are streets, and this is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. The irony is just amazing. So here we're going to look at how Occupy started, the sheer amount of people there, how it was steered into climate change by just a few agents, main one being Saskia Kent, who was working with East Anglia University, and she came down to Occupy, took it over using this human mic, this repetition with the crowd, shouting banal statements, and you'll see what Occupy actually turned into when she took control of it.
I'll be your facilitator. My co-facilitator is Julie. And if we get to a point where we're going to have people who want to make a point, you have to get on the stack through Julie. Please don't come and ask me.
We just started an agreement.
We call for a positive, sustainable economic system.
Yeah, why is it all about climate change all of a sudden?
That benefits present and future generations.
Are you trying to control me as well?
We stand in solidarity
Yeah, well, back off and leave us alone.
with the global oppressed, and we call for an end to the actions of our government and others in causing this oppression. This is what democracy looks like. Come and join us.
There's a hierarchy that doesn't want the people to speak. Well, I'm the people.
If you want to make a point, you know, if you want to say something to the group, you want to offer something, you stick your hand in the air like this, and I'll do my best. People behind me just tell me or whatever. I'll do my best to try and make sure everyone gets a chance to speak if they're brief and all of that.
And then we had, of course, the Green and Black Cross, who were part of the controlling of the protest movement with a firm of solicitors. So they would get you your solicitor if you'd been arrested. And therefore, the whole thing was a recruitment exercise. It was one big social experiment recruitment exercise on infiltration. And the money from Occupy got stolen by Climate Camp Action, got put into a separate bank account, and was never seen again.
Yes, you're not Occupy, you're Climate Camp.
So maybe you could skip forward a bit, Deb, actually, to the aftermath or your involvement with Brian Hoare in Parliament Square, because that was the same people again, wasn't it? Infiltrating.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because initially we didn't get involved with it. We knew that we'd heard about it going, because it started, I think it was around about May 2010, something like that.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually go up there then. But it was someone reported that Barbara Tucker, like that was used to work with Brian Hoare.
There were two of them. There's Barbara and Brian, and they were down there all the time.
Yeah.
And they were protesting against the Iraq war in Parliament Square, and they were there for years.
Yeah. Well, it was because there was a report that Barbara, because obviously they slept in tents. Barbara had been kicked in the head by one of in the tent by one of these Democracy Village people.
Right, let's bring that up there, because that's very important. Democracy Village was like an offshoot of the people from Occupy, the same infiltration group.
Yeah, same people,
It was called Democracy Village. The idea was, to give people the backstory of this, was Brian Hoare was taking up space, and he was showing the horror of the war in Iraq in all its graphic detail with pictures up. And it was right opposite Parliament. But because we had free speech, he was allowed to do it. Parliament Square was allowed for free speech. Democracy Village, remember, it's always backwards, so they use the word democracy when they want to take away your rights. Democracy Village came in, which was a mixture of undercover police, paid activists, and people who were just mentally ill, all thrown together, to cause a situation where the government had to stop protest in Parliament Square. So take it from there, Deb.
Yeah, so we went up there, and initially we were just going up there, as often as we could to help them out, And obviously, because of this Democracy Village, there was ongoing court cases because between the government and Boris Johnson, they were trying to get rid of Brian Hoare and Barbara Tucker. They tried every trick in the book. They even tried to change the law, was it SOCPA, to get rid of them, but they couldn't, because they couldn't revert it back. So before he was there, so they had to throw that out. So they tried various things, but as I say, so when they was in and out of court, so we used to stand there while they was in court to keep an eye on it. But you know, eventually we started staying there, and it was just awful. The Democracy Village. I mean, like from the minute you got up, you could hear them shouting and screaming. And at night, prior to the Democracy Village, there was already a fake peace campaign next to us called Peace Strike.
Peace Strike, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Miria Galistagi, she was fronting that, but there was another person. We won't go into that yet. That person will come up again later on. But so we was basically up there for about 18 months, sleeping in a tent opposite Parliament, House of Parliament. You know, so where we see a lot of goings on.
You saw the agitators, the infiltrators, and I think it's worth sort of reaffirming the point that a lot of the infiltrators from Occupy then went to this thing called Democracy Village, previously Peace Camp, and there was a lot of terrible things that happened around Brian Hoare and Barbara Tucker, wasn't there? They were kind of mercilessly attacked, really, by very subversive and nasty elements. Yeah,
they were attacked several times. Brian was because Brian was attacked, beaten up. He was arrested by the police. They nearly broke his back. Which is why he ended up being on crutches. They tried to arrest Barbara, nearly broke her neck, trying to arrest her. There was all sorts of things going up there. And we actually see firsthand, I know you were saying all these misfits were there. There was like various people there, people from the climate camp, but there was all different types of people there. You had the people from the climate camp, and then you had people, they just got, as you said, they got waifs and strays, people, drug addicts, alcoholics, and they used to turn up at night, and this Miria Galistagi or whoever was with her used to hand out these tents, these pop-up tents to give them to them, and you'd see these people drinking on the curb, and the police never used to do a thing.
Yes, they're trying to create the problem so they can enforce the already agreed solution, which is to stop people protesting. You can see who's the undercover police. You can see who the infiltrators are. You can see who the agent provocateurs are. It was very cartoonish in a way, I thought.
Yeah. It was surreal, completely surreal.
Yes. Yeah, like weird drama. It's almost like it's not reality because it's like a play, it's like a drama.
Yeah.
And then we have characters like Phoenix Rainbow, who was involved with the Bank of Ideas and Occupy. He's sort of paid activist, and he goes around saying he's a squatter. He was one of the main ones. And what we also talked about, Deb, was that it was really rough and ready then. Like you were saying, Barbara Tucker and Brian Hoare got very badly beaten up and very bullied and very violently intimidated by elements of the security services and the police.
We had experienced violence ourselves up there. My partner Ed was punched a few times. The one guy, I was trying to protect Barbara, and he was having a go at being nasty towards her, and I said leave her alone, and he's charged at me, body slammed me. So it was really dangerous up there. It was far from a peace campaign, put it that way.
Yeah, everything's reversed. But yeah, I found it fascinating because as someone who likes to observe before I join in anything, that's what I found most interesting. And that's what really interested me about the whole thing. It wasn't the actual movement, because there was no movement. There was nothing going to happen out of any of it, because it was overtly controlled. It wasn't even covertly controlled. It was overtly controlled.
It was so obvious for anyone that had eyes to see, basically.
Yes. Because I've talked about the Bank of Ideas, this fake squat that was set up in a Swiss bank, the USB bank, in Finsbury Square in the City of London. Who gets to squat? Who gets to squat a bank in the City of London? Nobody, unless they want you to. And we found out that it was a fellow called Victor Pearl in Argentina, who's part of the climate change agenda. And the whole thing was set up in advance at this place called London Action Resource Centre, which was heavily council funded. It's a lot of the groups in there, and it contained a lot of these anarchist groups. Now, this is another thing. They used to use Black Bloc and these anarchist groups to be a front for the undercover police when they wanted to shut down a protest. And now, of course, they don't use that as much anymore. So they've kind of homogenized everything. But there was also this group called the Wombles. Do you remember them? There were people who used to cover themselves in like cardboard boxes so the police couldn't beat them up. And the whole thing was, it was street theatre, wasn't it, really? But very dangerous and sinister edge. And some of those people were deeply sinister people. They looked like they'd been compromised by the police. They may have had a police record. A lot of them looked like criminals, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. As I say, you was talking about Phoenix Rainbow. As you say, he's been everywhere. I mean, he used to be at Parliament Square as well, at this peace strike next door. And I actually he comes out with his, oh, blimey, mate, you know, how's your father? But I saw him being interviewed by the BBC and he had a posh voice.
Oh, yeah, it's just an act. But that's the funny thing, because when the Bank of Ideas was evicted, there was a bailiff who panicked and he ran over several people. And I was pointing it out to this copper there. I said, he's just run that woman over. He ran this woman over. She was on the bonnet of the car for about 200 yards. Really dangerous. You know, she could have fallen underneath.
I know.
And then he comes along. All the cameras were there, and you can see me on it. It was on Russia Today, and it was in the Guardian News as well. And it was basically me saying to the copper, arrest the bailiff. He's run that woman over, and he's tried to run a few people over, which he had. I said, just get him out of the car because it's dangerous. And then this Phoenix comes up and he goes, are you going to let him? He ran the woman over. Are you going to let him get away with attempted murder? Murder, terrible murder. It was like that. It was like something out of Dick Van Dyke, you know. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. And I was thinking, well, it got on the news.
He ran that woman over. He ran the woman over! Attempted murder! Attempted murder! Attempted murder! Is he going to get away for attempted murder? Who are you? Arrest these guys! Get off him! Get off him!
I mean, that's another obvious thing to me and you, is like, these people were always in the Guardian.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
You know, people like Phoenix Rainbow, the 9/11 crew, Democracy Village, they all get interviewed by the Guardian. Dom, as we know, commonly known as Dom.
Yes.
They're all in the Guardian. Julian Assange, but that's another story.
Yeah, that's an even bigger energy harvest than all of this put together, I think.
Yeah.
Do you remember Stop the Bore? I mean, Stop the War. Do you remember that?
I do very well, yes.
I think it's still going. Complete energy harvest.
Yeah, he's come back on the scene.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And there's a bit of a history to that, isn't there?
Yeah, well, Chris Coverdale was the proponent of this Make Wars History, Stop the War, and all this sort of thing. But he was quite a dodgy character in the background, as we found out when we got involved with Parliament Square. Yeah. So when we got involved with Parliament Square, we noticed he made appearance there with Peace Strike, you know, with Maria Galistagi, as I mentioned before, and also he was involved in the Democracy Village as well. So he used to do talks there and stuff like that. And also he was supposed to be their legal expert when they went to court to get rid of the Democracy Village. And, you know, the whole purpose of it was to get, as you said before, get rid of Byron Hoare and Barbara Tucker.
Yes.
But then I delved into it a little bit more, and I discovered that him and Maria Galistagi set up the Peace Strike campaign, which is a fake campaign next to Brian Hoare, and also he set up Democracy Village as well, because he had the documents to say that he had the right to set up the Democracy Village and the Peace Strike. on his person.
Yes, it's good to bring that up again, Debbie, because as we know, these characters, many of them are still around and they're still pushing the same dead ends, and nothing's changed at all. All that's changed is that new people have come in who fall for it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, as I say, I pointed it out to a friend of mine. She put a video up about Chris Coverdale recently in a Telegram group, and you know, banging on the same thing, you know, stop the bore, and basically stop paying your tax because it's going to wars. As a protest, and put it into an escrow account. So, like, it
that's
stays
what
in
they
the
were doing in the first
escrow
place.
But in the past, I warned her, because I said this is very dangerous getting into this, because a lady in the past, she did it. She was on pay as you earn, and she stopped her tax and put it into an escrow account. Well, the HMRC got in touch with her employer, that she was doing this, and she got the sack from her job. So
yes, what they do is they'll wait for one person to do that, then they will jump on them, and then of course it means no one else is ever going to try that ever again. And that is a definite strategy that we've seen over the years. And one to watch out for. Yes,
of course.
That whole thing about withholding taxes because of wars, it doesn't cut anything. Never has done, never will do. Because, of course, originally taxes were there to fund wars. That's why the English people were taxed in the first place.
He's talking about Occupy, and you make the connections, Democracy Village, Occupy, Julian Assange. They're all supported by George Soros. That's one big connection.
Absolutely. He's got very deep pockets, George, hasn't he? Seems to get everywhere.
But he's open society. Yeah.
That's it. It's all open. It's all about democracy. And that's the thing. You've also got Democracy Village. Climate Camp was classic. Climate Camp Action was really undercover police, and all the infiltrators from Occupy, the paid agents, went into Climate Camp Action. Then it went into fracking, didn't it? It went to fracking. They all went into fracking. That was the next stop, because there was this woman who got in touch with me, and I'd done a talk in Hackney, and she sort of latched onto me, and she knew somebody that I'd known years ago. He was famous really for having these parties in London. He was just a sort of eccentric with a lot of money, and she knew him. I said, "Oh, you know him? Oh, right, yeah, you know Robert, okay." And then I found out that she was one. She kept phoning me up and saying, "Oh, would you do this? Would you?" I said, "No, it's illegal. Why would I do a thing like that? I wouldn't cause any trouble like that. What are you asking me that for?" She was trying to get me to say things on the phone, you see. But there was so many of them, wasn't there? You got used to it in the end.
Yeah. It was just, but as I say, I mean, it's different, so different from today, then than it is today. There was one thing after another, wasn't there? One big thing after another.
There was, and it was a kind of roller coaster.
It's like a.
I suppose in a way, it's like comparing what happened in the 60s and 70s in music to what's happening now. It's because it had a bit of danger. It was like rough and ready.
It did.
That's what I think attracted me to it. Yeah.
It's, as I say, it was, well, as I say, you know, when you start out looking into these things, it all seems very exciting at the time. But when you look back and you think, oh my God.
Oh yeah, most of it was a complete waste of time. But I think that the result of a lot of that was the laughs we had, because this is the important thing. Where's the humour in it these days?
There's nothing.
They're all po-faced about stuff that they're just saying that nobody gives a damn what these new truthers are saying, because they're not getting they're not doing anything. They're all collectivized into groups. They all sell T-shirts and hoodies, and they're grifting for shekels on YouTube. But that's basically it. But that's the difference, I think. It's like the corporatization has got worse. And of course, when Occupy became Climate Camp, which actually became Extinction Rebellion, because Extinction Rebellion came out of Climate Camp Action, according to Gail Bradbrook, and they actually were complicit in starting these citizens' assemblies, which was the controlling process for Occupy and all these other groups. So we had this fracking thing. So let's get into that next, because they all went into the fracking, and all of the fake truthers went into the fracking, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, like Dom.
Yeah, all the people who were like wanted to push themselves to the forefront of this thing. And Ian Crane was involved in it all. They all seemed to congregate around this fracking, and some of it was again interesting because it was the same infiltration, the same people. I think George Brown was there, wasn't he? The laughing gnome, or the gnome that doesn't laugh. You know, the way it's changed is most interesting. And then, of course, the fracking thing. Then about that time. Just previous to that, let's get this right, because we got the UK column appearing. That appeared a long time ago to control the narrative and disrupt things, which they did very successfully years ago. People may not remember that now, but they promoted dead-end court cases. And then we had the tour with John Harris, the British Constitution Group. This was all gatekeeping. When you look back on it, it was all controlling of the narrative. But we didn't quite know that at the time, because there were still some rough edges on there. And it was about the time people were trying things out in court. It all got kind of collectivized. So then we got, this British Constitution Group, which became this new Chartist thing, which is still around. And ironically, it was Gerish who tried to stop one of them booking me. It's all in an article called The Conspiracy Grifters on winnersontheworld.net. Have a look at that. You'll find it entertaining. So we get on to the UK column, then we get on to things like Holly Greig case. You were around for that, weren't you? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, fortunately. I think a lot of people got not involved in it as such, but you heard about it and you knew the whole story sort of by the time it finished. But it was just the preposterous, the whole thing, really, as we found out in the end.
I think that's a good point, Deb, because when this was presented by people like Brian Gerish and Belinda McKenzie, they spoke with authority on the subject. So you assumed that they had a lot of information and correct information. Then we found out it was all BS. There was no case. They'd used this woman, but this is another point that's quite interesting as well. They get you to latch onto something, and if you go against it, they say you're a shill, and they get all the truthers to attack you. Yeah.
Well, as I say, the thing is, anyone that doesn't know the story, I mean, it was regarding a Down syndrome girl. So if you took, if you slightly said it was wrong, you was against people. You're against this poor Down syndrome girl. You got mocked.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It was the usual thing that they do now. You're a misogynist and you hate special needs people. No, the story's BS. That's the way they do it. Yeah. They collectivize people into an emotional group without any cognizant ability to do any critical thinking. And that's exactly right. They use the emotions of people, because obviously most people feel sorry for kids, children involved with anything like that. So they're trying to use people's emotions. Yes, absolutely. And then we got several of these cases, didn't we? There was seemed to be one thing after another, and it was all energy harvesting to really cover up the genuine abuse cases. That's what it was for. It was the state national security to basically cover the bases. So you all concentrate on this distraction over here. And meanwhile, we're going to start using this term, satanic ritual abuse, which means that the public will believe that children get abused, and they will be very angry about it. But if you start saying they're all involved in a satanic cult, satanic ritual abuse, then it becomes removed from 90% of the public, because they don't believe that would happen. Of course, it has happened, and it's always happened, and it will carry on happening. But what it does is it undermines the real abuse cases in the eyes of the public. It's called counterintelligence. And a few people started their own groups, and yours was pretty successful, wasn't it, Deb? You started up the Kent Freedom Movement.
Yes, it was good fun, shall we say? As I say, a few of us got together. Boyfriend Eddie, Chris, and myself. We said, let's start a little group, and we can do talks and things like that. Give out leaflets to get people there. Started off small, and then started off in a small little pub, and we thought, because we didn't know how big it was going to grow or how fast it was going to grow, but then we had one talk, and there was people sort of sitting on the floor and standing up and squeezed in. We think we're getting bigger now, we need a bigger space, so then we end up getting a bigger venue, and I'd say we was probably bringing in probably about 80 to 100 people every month. So it was pretty successful. And the good thing about it is you actually got to know people in your area as well. That was in the truth movement, as we call it. But as I say, we had some good speakers, some not so quite good, but
I think they were almost by public demand, though, weren't they? Because it was a bit more trial and error then.
Yes,
and I think we, of course, were cynical about some of the content of what these people were talking about, and indeed their motivations. But I think what was most important was the actual meeting up, because it was not just a social event, it was an event for exchanging valuable information.
It was, yeah.
And I think that's what happened with a lot of these groups, particularly groups like the 9/11 Keep Talking group that is still going. It's not really the speakers that are very interesting or important now. I think they were probably more important then because it was more of a new thing. But what I found was that it was the information exchanged within the group that was the paramount thing, absolutely the most important thing.
Yeah, I think people liked the fact that they could get together with like-minded people and have a bit of fun and, as you say, exchange information, which is important. Yeah, and we're still in contact with all those people now. So
yes, and I think that was also instrumental in us rooting out the rotten apples, shall we say?
Yeah, you got to know
that cohesion was very important, because when you have a small group at the core of something, they can't really be infiltrated because we all knew each other as friends. So even when people were trying to divide and rule someone against me, they would tell me, and we'd have a laugh about it, and we could throw a spanner in the works of it. And that's what it's all about, really. It's a game of strategy, isn't it, with all this stuff? And that's really where the fun is, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, as I say, we started the Kent Freedom Movement around about the same time as this Parliament Square. It was weird because we'd started this Kent Freedom Movement and the Parliament Square came as well, and everything was happening at once. Because it started out, Chris, my friend Chris, he said, I've printed out some leaflets. Let's start, doing talks and things like that, and I said, that's a good idea. And obviously, my boyfriend, he got involved as well. And we handed out these leaflets and started doing talks. We started up in Rochester and then ended up, Gravesend, Dartford, doing various talks, but as I say, like anything, what we've been talking about, like the reality group, you end up like, it's all shills. Most of the people that we have
being paranoid here. People think we're being paranoid here, but it really was. It was full of infiltration, because there weren't many groups doing this then, and I think that's what it was. So it was very easy for undercovers to come in and paid disruptors. Yeah. So it was like a pantomime, the whole bloody thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, the only good thing is, like, we met quite a lot of nice people, you know, that used to come, you know, members and everything, and like including yourself, and used to come, and you did a talk for us as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was I think it was a good thing. I mean, like, okay, you know, we've got some like shills turn up doing a talk for us and everything. Yeah. But as I say, you live and learn, don't you? How are you supposed to learn these things unless you get involved in it?
Yes.
And find out.
That's the point. That's the key point. That I think that was the good thing about then, because it all became very obvious to those who had eyes to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you had a lot of different speakers.
Yeah, we had quite a lot.
Speakers. Yeah.
Yeah, loads. I can't even count how many now. I mean, well, we did have Nick Colstrom a couple of times. David Shaler was there in one of the talks we did. I mean, because I think it was, what's his name? That's Ian Puddick done a talk. What was the other guy? Michael Doherty, yeah, he did a talk for us. Now,
recently. Michael died
recently. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, God bless him. But when he did a talk for us, there was like the room was filled up with coppers and MI5, and people would think you're exaggerating. You're not.
No,
because I looked these people up, and they were
more infiltrators there than audience. In most of these things.
Yeah.
And while I'm thinking about it, let's go to the 7/7 thing. Nick Colstrom wrote a book, Terror on the Tube, and I hadn't met David Shaler, but I'd actually seen him once when he was in the news, when he'd uncovered this plot to kill Gaddafi, and he was coming out with more and more things, and he was arrested, wasn't he? He was arrested in France.
Yeah.
And I'd never met him, but I saw him once on Tottenham Court Road, and I thought, God, that's David Shaler. I didn't want to bother him. I thought, wow, that's David Shaler, you know. And then years later, through Nick, we went and we met at this pub in King's Cross, the Betjeman, where 9/11 Keep Talking used to actually have their meetings. And I'd never met David before. And we went up to Luton and we filmed the whole of that series, 7/7 Revisited, which you can still see. It's very buried now. But it takes apart the whole narrative. That's the first time I'd met David.
So here we are, Dave, at the historic spot where the four allegedly arrived at 7:20 in the morning of July the 7th. Now, do you reckon any of those were really here?
No, well, there's no conclusive evidence of that. The picture we've been shown would never be accepted by a judge in a court of law as identification of the four, simply because you can't see their faces on there.
Yeah.
And of course there would be corroboration if that was a genuine picture, because there is a camera just the other side of that door, which would then photograph all four of them as they came through, at least inside profile. We don't have that. And again, I can say from being a counter-terrorist officer that in evidential cases, a policeman goes there and swears under oath that any picture taken off a CCTV tape is a true representation of that tape.
Yeah.
Now, in the absence of that sworn statement, that picture is not evidence, basically.
Yeah, I mean, in my book, I took the view that all four had probably been photoshopped in. All four look really suspicious, especially this bar here going through Khan. You got this bar going through his head, okay, and that bar going through his waist. Now, I'll just get down so you can see where Khan's head would be. It goes right through his face like that, okay? In the famous picture you've all seen, you see Tanweer and Hasib Hussain really did hire a car, and they probably did come down to London on that day.
So I think that was the great thing about it, that I'm still in touch with a lot of those people, and so are you. You know, this is great because we made friends for life there, really, because
of course,
we had to know that each other were genuine.
And it's, as you say, something that we haven't got now.
It was quite sinister, though, a lot of it, wasn't it? There was some very sinister characters around, and threats, and people who met me, and I found out they were the ones who were defaming me, because when I went to the People's Voice TV, I'd met this fella outside the Royal Courts of Justice. He introduced himself to me. I'd gone to one of these bloody energy harvesting things. I think it was Holly Greig. And And this fella turns up and he says to me, "Oh yeah, I like the way you've just observed." I said, "I always observe because you don't know who's who at these things." "Oh, good point." Went for a coffee with him. He started talking about all the stuff I was doing on my website, landofthefree.co.uk, about taking on these bailiff companies. Because I was very active at the time doing that. It was a real mission, actually, wasn't it? Because I went to the point of bankruptcy with council tax. I was trying all these things out, cutting clamps off my car nearly every week, and taking on these bailiff companies. And JBW Group wanted to take me to court. They couldn't do it. My article stayed up. I must have cost them a lot of money. And it was interesting because it was actually having an effect, and you felt quite empowered by all that. And that's what I found so fascinating about it, really. And so this fella, it turns out, who befriended me, turned up with his mate at a meetup we had in a pub in Holborn, went to this club, this private members place in Soho, just a late night drinking place. And he was asking me all these questions. Then he was telling me about a currency they were going to set up in Panama, digital currency in Panama, And it turns out these two people I'd met were the very ones who were hosting the site with all the defamation on me on the People's Voice TV, the thing I sent you the other night.
Yeah.
It was these two people. How barefaced can you get? We're your best mates, Mark. We're your best mates. And the next thing is, so I said, take it down. That's defamation. Never heard from them again. But one of them apparently told my friend he worked for French military intelligence. So the whole thing was, and the other fella, Kia, he was involved with VoIPON, which is voice over internet protocol phones. What a great way of espionage. You set up a server for somebody, and you've got access to it. You can listen to anything. You could bring companies down.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, and that's where I found there's a connection between the private sector and the security services. It's corporate, they're working hand in hand. So they do a bit of private work. And that was what was so interesting about it to me, that we were just basically surrounded by these people and the people's voice. That was totally infiltrated. I mean, it was oh my God, we can't get away from them. There was a woman who used to come in 8 o'clock in the morning. She wouldn't go until 7 o'clock at night. She said she was a film editor. Nothing about her on the internet. Every time I'd be talking, she'd come up and she'd be asking who the people were. What is that? Your relative? Do you know them? All this sort of stuff. And we got them going. We used to get them going. John, who was there, was working on my show. I said, "Wait a minute. I'll say one of the names in a minute." So I'm going blah 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 blah. And I mentioned one, and she's looking around like. And he says, "Bloody hell, mate! I did it again, And she kept doing it because they all knew each other. So once you mentioned the name, they couldn't help it. It was reflex because they didn't expect you to know the names of these other infiltrators. Fascinating stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
See, that's another thing as well. It's funny how all these different people, they're supposed to be strangers to each other, and all of a sudden they're best of pals.
Oh yeah.
Because so that it's all one big club for them, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And we're not in it. It's one big club and we're not in it. That's where we went wrong,
We should have taken that other pill, Mark.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look at this. I've got the most marginalised show on the internet. All the truthers hate this show because they can't compete with it, or I say things that are too truthful for them. And they've got no bloody sense of humour anyway. They're trying to grift most of them. But I mean, I think that's the thing. After all this we've been through, we've both got a great sense of humour. We had such a laugh the other night talking about it all.
It was. The whole thing is absurd. As I say, if you say like you didn't know any of this and you spoke to someone and you was having a deep conversation with them and you tell them all this story, they'd say, "You're making this up."
But in a way, that was the horrific thing, wasn't it? Because you couldn't really tell anybody apart from the people in your circle, because no one else would believe it anyway. Say, "Oh, why would they be following you around?" Well, the thing is, I was asking the same question. I mean, if they're following us around, they must be bloody bored,
Yeah. Well, as I say, it's funny. You said that people. It's like they're stalking you, isn't it? And But partner Ed, he had the similar sort of thing. There was like. He was up in Parliament Square. I think he was on his own. I wasn't there. And this guy just come up to him and he was doing this. He was saying that he's got this tool that you put on people's body, like your arms, if you've got something wrong with your arm or leg, and it heals. So, like, I said, oh, that sounds good. And he says, oh, I'll tell my mum, that might be good for my mum. So he said, oh, yeah. He said, come up to this place. So next minute, he was saying, oh, I'm going up with, Sal's taking us up there, his sister. We're going up there. We're going to, get, and I just had this big dread about it. I said, no, don't go up there. I don't know why. I just had this like feeling of dread that you shouldn't go up there. Turns out there's another shill. It's his house. Sacha Stone.
Oh, him. Oh, God.
Yeah.
King of the grifters.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But it's like Ed was pinpointed. He's seen him there and go, oh, well, I'm going to go up to him. Yeah. And then you had several people that we got in touch with, and they all come from supposedly where Ed comes from. I won't say because, but like where he comes from. And when you look on their pages, they've got nothing to do with that area at all.
Exactly. Like that's the same experience I had with Tamara, this woman.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because she knew somebody I knew, I thought, well, I don't really care. In a way, it didn't bother me.
No.
What bothered me was that they might do something, or they might set you up or something like that. That's what bothered me. It wasn't actually them that bothered me, because I thought it was quite funny most of the time. But there was a sinister side to it. And I think what it was, I think we've made this point already, but it's worth making again, that there was some really deeply sinister people around.
Yeah.
Weren't there? Yeah. On the fringes of it, or the very dangerous people.
Oh, right. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, it's like in Parliament Square, there were some characters there. I mean, there was all odd different people, as I said before. You've got the Democracy Village lot, you've got all the drunks and alcoholics. And then you had these other sinister characters there. I mean, one guy, you could tell he was a copper. You just could tell he was a copper. Yes. We called him Bent Burnside from the bill. And then there was this other guy, this black guy, and he had one arm. We called him the one-armed bandit. You had to have like fun. You had to sort of have a bit of laugh up there because it was quite serious, really. And I think I told you that story when I was on the train, didn't I?
Yeah.
I was coming in.
Tell the viewers.
Yeah. I was going by train from where I live into London, and there was this guy on there. There was these two guys on there, and all of a sudden the train stopped. And I was going to Parliament Square, and the train stopped, and all of a sudden the driver made an announcement: is there anyone here from emergency services, like police, whatever, ambulance, whatever, to help us get rid of this bit of wood on the track, tree trunk? So these two guys stood up. One of them said, yeah, I clear, I do, like if there's an accident, I clear the road and help out and things like that. And this other guy said he was something to do with like the ambulance service or something. And they both stood up. They was going to do something. And then the driver said, no, we've got someone now. You don't need to. So then these guys were talking about, oh, I'm in the police, I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't think anything of it. So we had to detour at Hither Green and then get off there. And then we both got on the same train. And then we sort of split up when I got to the other end. And when I got to Parliament Square, I think I explained there was two campaigns there, one fake one and our one. You had the Brian Hoare Parliament Square Peace Campaign, and next door to it was called Peace Strike, who was the one that was giving out all the tents to all these drunks and alcoholics and drug addicts. And I got there, and guess who was there? This copper dressed up in another costume, making out he was this peace campaigner. And yet he told me he was a policeman on the train, and he even said he was when he was going to help out the driver.
Oh, yeah. When they need to virtue signal, there'll be coppers all day long, but they're meant to be undercover. I mean, what a bunch of idiots when you think about it, Blow your cover on the train on the way there. I mean, if you're working undercover, the first... they make terrible spies.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's ridiculous. But
I know. But his face when he saw me, it was a picture.
Yeah,
he couldn't believe I was there in that peace campaign,
And what we used to do was go, all right, Sarge, I need to look round. because there was one at Occupy, wasn't there, Mark Weaver, and he actually is still working as undercover cop. And the last I saw him was years ago on Facebook. He's a DJ now, of course. He's a DJ banging tunes out for the kids, you know.
Yeah.
And,
well,
funny enough, though, wherever you saw him, people got arrested. You know?
Yeah, funny that. Yeah.
But
sorry, this guy that was a copper, then he was a peace campaigner, whatever. He was supposed to be in some group or something, a singer. And he calls him. He was on Facebook. He called himself Radfax. So it's not as if it's like just my imagination. He's there. Yeah.
Well, that was a funny thing at that Bilderberg thing. We're skipping about a bit here, but obviously it's kind of it's related. The Bilderberg protest. My mate Pete gave this Tony Z. This fella called himself Tony Z, who was actually the front man on the website that were defaming me. He was putting all this stuff up about me. And we can get into that a bit later if we have time. But it's actually intensely boring, but it was quite disturbing at the time because I was being gang stalked basically when I was at TPV. I was being gang stalked by loads of them, you know, online. Yeah. But there was also things that happened which were very threatening as well. So they do take it seriously. But so this fella's come down, this Tony Z. Apparently he was drunk in the car. Went to the Bilderberg protest. That was this thing at Watford in 2013, where Goldman Sachs paid for the truthers to be in their own little field with a UK column, the only people who are allowed to stay there overnight, by the way, on camp for Goldman Sachs, of course. Yeah. And cool. So he got there, apparently, because I found this out later, my mate Pete told me, he was drunk. He got himself arrested before he went in. 2 hours later, he's walking around in a suit chatting to the police. I wonder how that happened. But it happened all the time, didn't it? These characters were, but I think there was a certain arrogance to them because they're full of themselves. They're very immature egos, and they'd make terrible spies. But that's British intelligence for you. It's British intelligence. Yeah. What they call intelligence, anyway.
That's right. They call it intelligence. Yeah. It's far from it.
Yeah, it's absolutely dumb. It really is. But I think that was the fun of it then, wasn't it? Really. And then let's bring him in now. Tony Farrell turns up, who'd written his intelligence report for South Yorkshire Police, found out 9/11 was an inside job. Then, of course, 7/7 was an inside job as well. And he couldn't write his report and say that there was a threat of Islamic terror when he believed, or he said he believed, I don't think he believed it, that the people had been used as patsies. It was based on a film by Anthony John Hill, also known as Muad'Dib, which is Teacher of Righteousness in the film Dune, by the way, if you want to know that. Yeah. And he came along as a kind of Yahweh figure of the truth movement. And he made this film, Ripple Effect 7/7 Ripple Effect, which is very good. Then Nick Colliston brought out a book on it, which was, I think, the definitive work. And we went around filming it with Dave Shaler when I first met him. And that was called 7/7 Revisited. So around that time, this Tony Farrell turns up, and all of a sudden, as I say, they're nowhere, then they're everywhere. He infiltrated everything. He even wanted to get into the deadbeat dads who were taking on the child support agency, but he couldn't get into that because he didn't have a case. He was trying to get into UFOs. He was trying to get into everything. And he implanted himself. And the first time I saw him, I thought, wrong 'un. What did you think?
False. Yeah. I think it was through Belinda Mackenzie.
That's right. Let's give this some background. Belinda Mackenzie had this house where all of these activists seemed to gather, and around her, everything seemed to go wrong. Everything seemed to go wrong. And she was in touch with Gerish every day, and they were trying to control all of these truth people. And a lot of it centered around her house in Highgate. And this Tony Farrell then turns up at her house in Highgate. And that's where we met him, I think. And I didn't trust him. He did a talk for the 9/11 Keep Talking group. And somebody got up there and confronted him a couple of times. And it's quite funny. But everybody else believed it. And they thought this fella was some hero. And of course, he was a Christian. This is the big thing. The Christian grift is massive, isn't it, to try and get trust? We found that was being used at the time. It's got much worse now,
Yeah. As I say, you know, the thing was when Belinda was talking about it, I didn't actually know the whole story, to be honest.
Yeah.
She said, "Oh, he's an information analyst. He's found 9/11." I thought, "Oh, well, cool, whatever." But then when we met him and he started talking about all this stuff, we're thinking, this just doesn't add up. And then when he brought up the 7/7, Charles 7, oh, that was it.
Right, that's a year later though. Let's save that, because that was one of the biggest energy harvesters in modern history. But he presented himself to all these different groups, and pretty much a year later to the day after he appeared, he introduced this woman who called herself Charles 7, who said the 7/7 bombings were done to shut her up. Now, if you go to the conspiracy grifters on the homepage at winnersontheworld.net, or put it in the search bar, you'll see her and all about her, okay? We don't need to go into that. She was a fantasist, and this is an important thing. She obviously had some mental health problems. She was a narcissist and a fantasist. And she thought everything in the world had been done to shut her up, basically, because her story was she'd written Strictly Come Dancing, which was written before she was born, but let's not bring facts into it. And she said she'd written all these different things. And this Tony Farrell then presents her at Belinda Mackenzie's house, and I'd been there for a meeting, and because the 9/11 Keep Talking group used to meet there until all this blew up, then they stopped talking. Then they stopped talking there because they all came centered around attacking me, because I said, no, this woman's talking nonsense. What are you talking? And then Belinda Mackenzie turns on me and says, "You're an idiot. We could have changed the world, and you're blown it." And I was just trying to warn her that it was rubbish. You see. Then I realised that what most of these people had been promoting was absolute rubbish. It was nonsense. And then the whole lid blew off it, because I think it was that made me realise that, wait a minute, the Holly Greig thing and all these other cases that came up. When I asked her about them, she didn't know anything. She knew nothing about them. She had no evidence. And the same with the UK column. And I thought, wait a minute, what is going on here? And I tried to warn Gerish that this was a load of rubbish, and that they'd had them, Tony Farrell and Charles 7, on the UK column, and the video's still up, with Tony Farrell, and this woman saying that the top internet liable lawyer in the country, who worked for one of the biggest law firms in the country, was somehow complicit, along with all these media people, in basically trying to see her off. And I said, that's liable, Mr. Gerish, you could get shut down. Sent him an email. I thought I'd warn you. And next thing is, he's told this woman that I've said it, and he's told Tony Farrell. And Farrell then phones me up in a fit of rage, which is actually quite comedic, because he had the most, hey, Mark Windass, what are you doing, man?
Hello, Mark. I'm here to expose to Windows on the World a conspiracy of megatastic, anthropological and utterly indescribable proportions. Indeed, a conspiracy so climate-changingly, pole-shiftingly jelly-like in its incomprehensibility, I can scarcely articulate the true scale of this enormous pre-crime that I'm about to report. It came to my attention that this megalithic, evil-tastic and Teletubby-like conspiracy by an out-of-control oligarchical elite dwarfs all previous plots by the New World Order. My latest 2,000-page report will reveal the true perpetrators of this conspiracy, who appear to be controlled by an off-planetary elite. I hereby name Mark Windows as the central figure in this shadowy conspiracy to enslave the viewing public with misinformation, lies, downright disgusting innuendo designed to appeal to the lower vibrational energies. This show is blatant propaganda, as my latest report will reveal.
But that was the thing. So what happened was, all these people started attacking me. That's when the so-called gang stalking started. Loads of people started attacking me, and then I got into the TPV thing, People's Voice, and then it got worse, you see. And we talked about the infiltration. We did shows about infiltration on TPV. You were there. We did a really good one, didn't we?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. As I say, I mean, and then... go on. Sorry, Mark.
No, it's okay. I want you to flow, Deb. I'm just trying to get you into, so it set things up.
No, it's just that we got attacked on the KFM website as well.
That's right.
I think Tony Farrell come on the chat on our website.
That's right.
And he said, Yeah,
I think you should say the story. Yeah.
Yeah. He said for the Kent Freedom Movement, you might as well say KKK. Because we didn't believe their story. It's just ridiculous. And all our members were all laughing. I just thought, who is this guy?
It was unbelievable, wasn't it? They pushed that, and then Gerrish to this day still says that she was real and she was a targeted individual, and I had no sympathy for her. He told the New Chartists that when I was going to speak there a few years ago, because the woman who's organising the meeting sent me the email and said, "Mark, look at this, you won't believe it," and I did believe it because I was there at the time. But that's the thing, and that was what it was all about, wasn't it, Deb? It was about energy harvesting, because he wasted so much time. Then he wrote this report with me in it and all this, and you can download it. It's got the farrellreport.net, and you can go through this nonsense. Somebody must have been paying him to write that garbage, because he was at it for about 6 months. And there was, again, it's the same thing as all the other things. No proof, just a load of nonsense that's easy to discredit, which makes everyone look stupid. And if they don't get you looking stupid agreeing with it, they'll attack you as a shield for not agreeing with it. That's the way it works.
Yeah, they turn the tables on you, don't they? They class you as shills or whatever. Yeah, they've got so many angles, so they had the Holly Gregg, so you can't say that's wrong because you're against, you're taking a mickey out of Holly Gregg. She's a Down syndrome girl.
Yeah.
And then they winged a black woman. So if you don't believe in her, you're racist.
Oh yeah. Well, that was the funny thing, you see, because I think Belinda said that I decided not to believe Charles Steven, or I think her name's Judith or something, and because I'd obviously. I was totally enamoured with her. I fancied her, and somehow she'd rejected me, and that's why I didn't believe the story.
I remember that,
and then of course this woman, this Charles Steven, she's calling us racist. You see, saying I'm a racist and all that. Yeah. So then this friend of ours turns up, doesn't she, Nina, and she goes, "Well, wait a minute. How could if he fancies her, how could he be a racist?"
We don't get mental, did it? Right?
Yeah, and I think the demise of it was with 160 fish jokes on your website, wasn't
it? I remember. Yeah.
We started using these fish jokes because, we called him Tony Mackerel, and it was, and he kept thinking it was some sort of thing about him smelling or something. It didn't make any sense. No, we called him Tony Mackerel because it was like a joke, and I won't go into the jokes we had because only me and you would be laughing at it. Nobody else would, right? But I mean, we put that house in Highgate. I mean, I remember there one night with Stan Space Cowboy, and we were laughing so much we were crying on the floor. We were laughing, and he was sat there po-faced. And he just couldn't understand what we were laughing at, which made it even funnier. It got completely out of hand. And the next thing is, which was interesting, he disappears.
Yeah. Like we said before, they disappear. Yeah.
The funny thing was that he then went to become a disciple of Anthony John Hill, Muad'Dib, and he went to Ireland, to the Tara Hills, to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. And this was the truth of days, wasn't it? This was when it was fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was. There was so much there were so many gags you could make out of these things, to be honest. It was funny.
It was brilliant, wasn't it? I mean, I'm still laughing at that now.
Yeah. The last thing I saw of him was he was dressed exactly like Anthony Hill. Muad'Dib, with his blue skull cap and his blue outfit and big trainers.
No, with a beard.
And beard. Don't forget the beard.
And I remember because of the video, and it says, and I'd just like to mention, there are infiltrators in the truth movement, like Mark Windows. Mention me. And then I made this video called The Conspiracy Theorist, and it was using his voice and had a colander on my head, with a tin foil hat, colander on my head. Oh, God. I mean, it's just brilliant, wasn't it?
It was all wobbling about. Yeah, funny.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was cool.
So that brings us up to, we've done quite a lot there. Yeah, the resets. That was another thing that happened, wasn't it? The reset. Now, you talk about reset now. There was one then, wasn't there? About 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And who would have thought it then? There'd be this other reset coming up.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about the reset, Deb.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, it was you that said, have you seen this? And this story about this reset, and you said, oh, this guy, he's got a Facebook group and he's investigating it. Do you remember?
Yes.
And so we joined his group, and then the fun started, didn't it? We had Duran Duran, the reflex instead of the.
It was well.
Oh, it was fun times.
I think the funniest thing was we set up a thing called Reset Radio, but it wasn't radio. It was a Facebook page.
That's right.
You remember that? So we called it Reset Radio.
Yeah.
And we all jumped on it at like 8 p.m. We'd go live because we wanted them to know. We wanted them to be on it. Right?
Yeah, of course.
So we renamed them all with comedy names. We gave them all comedy names that sounded a bit like them. And that made them bloody furious, didn't it?
Yeah, because one of them was Tara Ahmad, wasn't it? We called her Tara Armband.
Tara Armband, yeah. And Ray the Savage. Ray the Savage. And he came in like swinging on a rope and started attacking people. It was mental, wasn't it? I mean, they must have hated us because one thing they're not allowed to indulge in is humour. They're not allowed to indulge in humour because humour's ambiguous. You know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And there was a guy, I can't remember his name now, Tony. And I mean, me and Paul, I said, he's definitely a copper, this guy.
Tony Chenster.
He just looks and acts like a copper.
Tony Chenster.
No, it wasn't Tony Chenster.
All right, another Tony. Right.
Yeah, no,
I think he was a copper.
There was this other guy that was in the reset. I can't think his surname. He's still on Facebook now.
Right.
He's still on Facebook now, but he's obviously a copper. It was so funny. And but as I say, all these people that were connected to that the reset, they were just so suspicious, weren't they?
Yes, because they were involved in things that were suspicious, like the Charles Seven thing or the Tony Farrell thing. And then yes, also
of course.
There was someone who was involved in, and I know this for a fact. His name was Paul, and he was involved at Occupy as well, and he was involved in messing up a friend of mine's case, and she had to leave the country because the social services were trying to take the kid. So she just fled the country. And
I know
what you're talking
about.
Yeah. What's, that was horrific.
Right.
She fled the country.
Yeah, very serious side to it. Yeah.
And so you see the different layers of this. But the reset thing, it was all about what they're doing now. It was about parish councils. It was about communitarianism. It was about everyone, the global to local thing. They were trying to push these parish councils. Then a few years later, what happens? They're pushing parish councils to make it look as though it's local, when of course it's not. They're just giving them global power to implement policies locally. So this was another communistic push, the reset. And of course, that's what it was in communist times, throughout Europe. They always called it a reset.
Yeah.
The reset was apparently in Poland as
well.
Of course. Very interesting. So they've been trying this stuff, and it was more rough and ready then. And there was more people who I think were unhinged and very unbalanced. And I think that's what made it edgy, but also really weird and sinister. Yeah.
Because on the periphery, it looked harmless. You got involved with it, the storyline, and you mocked it or criticised it, then you realised you got a backlash from that.
Yes.
And you could see what these people were really about.
Yes, absolutely. So, kind of in conclusion for this session, the way that it's changed has become much more corporate, hasn't it?
Yeah. As I say, and because like before, it was like cells, if you know what I mean. You had the Reset, you had Democracy Village, you had all these different things. Whereas now it's like herding sheep, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's all on the internet, and the nonsense that is on there is way behind what was happening 20 years ago. That's the depressing thing. So in other words, the truther movement has regressed into complete arrested development. And the people who have made it that way are the ones who want to become celebrities with it and make money out of it. They have no integrity to what is known as the truth. And that's really what's happened. So in other words, the state has nothing to worry about anymore. They've captured it. They've captured it all. And people are talking about issues of no importance, about whether Kate Middleton's photographs have been doctored. Nonsense, absolute nonsense after nonsense after nonsense. Satanic things that NASA's doing. And I mean, these things are just a wind up. They are just a wind up. And then all of the usual distractions on top of that.
Yeah, that's for sure. As I say, you know, they used to, as I say, you know, they had, as we said, like they had the UK, they had cells, you know, like the UK column, you had the Democracy Village, you had the More Dib thing, and you know, there was all different pockets. Now it's just one big, you know, I don't know, it's just one big
they're either
thing, isn't it?
New Age or into fake common law. They've collectivized them into issues that are going to lead them nowhere or worse. But it's now seemingly in the eyes of the state a done deal. So what we have to do, and what people I know have been doing, is working outside of that. So you have to work outside this so-called truth or industrial complex now. You have to work outside it because it's been totally captured. And the people who are in it grifting away, promoting each other, they're just media, you know what's, you know, that's it really. And
that's right.
So in summary, I'd like you to sort of sum up what the difference is yourself, Deb. What have you noticed particularly?
I just, all I see now is I don't see anyone saying anything of importance at all. It's all like you just said, you know, like they'll pick out things like the Queen, the Queen's not dead, the King's not dead, Kate Middleton, and, you know, like, that's not a man, that's a woman. You know, like Michelle Obama. Even if that was true, what? Even if it was true, what is it?
Well, I think the point
how's that going to help us in any way, shape, or form?
They want to degenerate the minds of the public. So once you know that, then you know that they do these things.
Right.
So what's worse is that the people who are meant to be opposing it are also degenerating the minds of the public.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, the average truther, whatever you want to call them, they all seem to follow each other. They, you know, it's like you see one story and like 20 others have shared the same story, and you're like, what's the point of that? Exactly.
Which is why you have to be completely outside of it to actually report on anything of importance anymore, because that's what they do. And they have the same people on all their shows. Apart from me, of course. They never have me on, which is great. It means that we are totally separate, you know. But after all we've been through, I think it's worth sharing with the public. And I hope people have enjoyed this. We're going to do a follow-up, I think, because there's probably lots of stuff we can talk about.
I think the show... I think this show is good because, you know, as we said before, you know, people, I mean, we sort of built up a pattern recognition we got to know these people and realise there's something not quite right about them, and then so we can easily spot the next one and the next one. Whereas people haven't got that now. They can't. You know, you say there's something not right about them. What do you mean? They're all right.
Yes, exactly. And you're negative for pointing it out. You're negative for pointing out the positive. So the new positive is negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they don't get it. They still think it's positive.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. You know, and and then you've got all these stand in the parks, you know, banging on about the same things and not really getting to the point of anything, you know, and solutions.
Well, that is the point, isn't it? Collectivization. And I think ever since I put out COVID Protest Social Engineers, where we sort of uncovered all that, especially what happened during the COVID thing and the way people were collectivized on every level through that. And then I did another one called Agents of Revolution. And if you look at those two articles, you'll see a lot of the stuff we've been talking about tonight, and all the proof is in there. And it depends how far you want to go with it. But I've found it a roller coaster, actually. And now it's just like a corporate drone world. It's very, very boring. I mean, there was something exciting about it. It was a bit scary. Yeah. It was a bit weird. But I like the weirdness of it, because all these characters, they were throwing these characters at us and these stupid court cases and these they were showering us with goods, basically. It was like a, you know, it was a display of riches, which is not there anymore. I mean, you've got the latest, who we got now? Who's the latest plants? Mark Sexton. And then this is other copper. They're dreary. They're beyond. They always were, but these are beyond dreary. I mean, how can you milk something for that long with so little and still get away with it? It is unbelievable, isn't it?
And how many whistleblowers is there going to be?
Oh yeah, the new whistleblower is the latest one that's promoted on the block, isn't it?
That's
unbelievable.
Right.
And they all have them on the shows, don't they? Oh, I'll have them on. I mean, that did happen with people like Farrell, didn't it? You think, oh no, they've got Farrell on there, you know. So, but we could disrupt it then with humour. You see, that was the point. We could disrupt it all with humour, and that was what was funny about it. It was hugely entertaining. It was kind of addictively entertaining.
Now there isn't that. Now there isn't anything like that. Now
we need more fun. So throw at us some ridiculous characters. All the characters now are boring. All your fake truthers, they're boring. Let's have some characters back. Let's have, you know. Maybe I'm overstating a bit, because they weren't really characters. They were still pretty boring, but we made them into characters. Now you can't even do that, because they haven't got any personality at all, you know. Nothing there, nothing. But there we go.
I know.
Hope it hasn't shattered too many people's illusions out there. And if it has, that's great, because that's what we're here for. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you maybe what you might need to hear. Well, that was great, Deb. Apart from, I think we got a bit of latency there where I didn't know whether you could hear me or not. But I think apart from that, it was cutting out a bit. So that's great. I think we nailed a lot of stuff there. Thanks a lot, and let's do it again.
Yeah, it's good. I enjoyed this. Yeah.
Reversal of the poles in the